Sometimes life is messy. Have you ever wished you could refocus your mind, home, relationships, and work life? Join us as we use research-based information to make practical changes and simplify life. This is Life Simplified.
Welcome to Life Simplified. This is Ashley, and I'll be your host for today. And we are covering all different topics in the nutrition world. Last episode, we talked about food dyes. So if you have not listened to that, I would encourage you to scroll on back and listen to that one. And then today, we're talking about macronutrients. So, listeners, be thinking about this. Have you heard about counting macros? And I'm getting some nods in this room. I see a lot on my social media, and I don't know if that are just the creators that I happen to follow, but all the time we're counting macros. And so when we were deciding on topics, this sounded like a pretty good one. And we think a lot about protein. I see a lot of, this is a high protein food. Let's blend up this cottage cheese and mix it with lots of other things. And now we have a high protein food. But we don't always think about what those other macronutrients are. So macro means large, nutrient equals nourishment. So those macronutrients are the nutrients that we need in larger amounts, and then they're broken down into energy. Sometimes we hear of people trying to eliminate one of the macronutrients, but our body actually need all three in order to function properly. And all of the information that we are talking about today comes from our University of Kentucky publication all about macronutrients, what you need to know. So first of all, do we know what the three macronutrients are? Like I said, we typically think of protein because that's what we're seeing all over social media. The other two, carbohydrates and fats. And then I get a lot of looks at times about fats because they're like, whoa, nope. We have to lower our fat intake. So we're going to dive in and talk about that a little bit more and why we need each of these three nutrients. And by the way, they're not the only nutrients we need, but they're the three we're going to focus on today. And then we will talk about how to make that happen in real life, what that actually looks like. So let's start with carbs. Let's start with carbohydrates. They may or may not be my favorite, but what are your favorite carbohydrates? I'll go first.
I'm like, I like them all. What are you talking
I know.
about?
I really like carbohydrates.
Is there a favorite?
They are delicious. I probably though, if I have to pick one, I feel like it's going to be potato chips. You know, I like my potato chips.
I was going to say donuts.
I like donuts too.
I was thinking pasta.
I was thinking pasta.
I like
make
it
a lot
too.
of pasta.
I love pasta too.
I mean, carbs
We
are.
eat a lot of pasta
We
at
do
our
too.
house.
Yeah.
Come
you
on
can put
now.
any other protein with it. It's fabulous.
And it goes
Yeah.
a long way.
Because there's 5 of us, and like 3 are boys, and they're eating strong right now.
And I feel like
and
if you-
athletes, like my daughter's an
Yeah.
athlete. My boys are growing boys. Like my husband, like
I get it.
cost effective.
That's how we do it.
I say, let's be honest. Come on, we all love carbohydrates.
We
all
love
things
the
carbohydrates.
Not mad at the carbs.
Yes, we love the carbs. Now, carbs can get a bad rap. People like to cut out carbs and say that we shouldn't include those in our diets, but carbs are our body's main source of energy. So our bodies do need those carbohydrates. Now, just like proteins, just like fats, not all carbs are created equal. So we do want to go for those higher quality carbohydrates, but we'll get to that in just a minute. It is recommended, based on the dietary guidelines for Americans, that 45 to 65% of our total calories per day come from carbohydrates. And that's a pretty big chunk. Different factors vary depending on whether or not you need the 45%, if you need 50, if you need 65. We're not going into that today. We're just doing an overview. If you do have questions about specifics in a diet, we would encourage you to do some research as well as consult with a dietitian. But when we think about carbs, we typically think of those breads, those pastries, the cereals. But carbohydrates are also in fruits, vegetables, and even the sugar in our dairy products. So when we think about carbohydrates, we really have to think about all of the foods we are consuming and not just those breads and those pastas, which are delicious. We have two different types of carbohydrates. We have our complex carbohydrates and our simple carbohydrates. The complex include fiber and starches, and our simple include sugars. So of those two, which one do we think are the higher quality, the ones that we want to lean more towards? Complex carbs. So sometimes we lean more towards those simple carbs over here, like I said, potato chips. We all know that's my weakness, and I love them. But they are not a high-quality carbohydrate, and I do know that. I recognize it. It's okay. Moderation is the key here. Our simple carbs, those are the ones that give us that quick burst of energy. So they do provide energy, which our body needs, but they don't always have those extra nutrients that our body needs. So we have natural sugars that are found in fruits and dairy, which also have other nutrients. And then we have our added sugars, which we've talked about in previous episodes. We can see all kinds of information about added sugars and how we want to lower our added sugars. And so I'm not going to tell you any different. We do want to limit our added sugars because typically those that have the added sugars don't have a whole lot of those other nutrients that we need. The dietary guidelines recommend that we consume less than 10% of our calories from foods that contain those added sugars. When we're thinking about complex carbohydrates, those are the ones that we want to prioritize, and those are divided into two different sections. We've got fiber and starches. Starches, they are digested over a longer period of time than those simple sugars. So they give you energy, but it's not that quick burst of energy. They are typically higher in fiber. So oats and beans. We don't always think about beans as being a source of carbohydrates, but they are. Rice, potatoes, corn even is a starchy carbohydrate, which is also a vegetable. So we get our carbs from multiple food groups. Refined grains, so the breads and pastries that are not whole grain or the pastas that are not whole grain, those are also starches, but they have had those B vitamins removed. So it is really best to prioritize the whole grain foods. And how do we tell if it's a whole grain food?
Because when you look at your food nutrition label, you want to make sure that it says 100% whole wheat. That the very first word is whole wheat. And if it's second or third one, then it's not 100% whole wheat.
Yes. So that food label we mentioned in our food dyes episode, that food label is going to be very handy for knowing what this looks like. Fiber. All right. So fiber is really important. And typically we as Americans do not get enough fiber in our diet. And fiber is not digestible, but it is very important for our body, even though it doesn't get broken down for energy. It helps move food through our digestive system and helps us feel full. I've given you lots of information about carbohydrates, but what does this look like in real life? What can we do? How can we apply this information when we're thinking about our meals?
So I think one thing is making those small changes. Again, we talk about small changes a lot. And I think in the nutrition world, it has to be small changes because we get so used to certain ways that our taste buds take some time to go back to where they need to be. And for me, when I started working in an extension and learning more about nutrition things, because that wasn't really my background prior to coming here, I started making those small changes for my family. And so doing things like buying only whole grain breads and getting your kids used to that color and texture and flavor really makes a difference. And now they can't tell the difference, and they actually will order the whole grain bread when they're out as opposed to white bread. And then the same thing with your pastas and anything that you can get in a whole grain, just slowly transitioning your family. And pasta is a really pretty easy place to start because typically you're putting sauces and adding different veggies and proteins and things to it. So you're not tasting any real difference that's there. So just making those small changes along the way to having the types of carbs that are going to benefit you better than the ones, like, they're all going to give you energy, but am I going to also get the fiber and the other nutrients?
And I love that you said the small changes, because if you go in and you're like, all right, everything is switched to whole grains, we're going to switch the pasta and we're going to switch the bread and no more added sugars, then, I mean, that's going to be a problem. Probably not just for your family. That might be a problem for you too. I know it would be a problem for me. I interned with Extension many years ago, and my first experience with a whole grain pasta was during that internship. And so I made those small changes then. So when I started dating my husband and the kids started coming over, when we had pasta, that's just what I had. And as far as I knew, they didn't know the difference. So I think that's an easier place to start. And you can even mix it. So you can mix some of your regular pasta with your whole wheat and just make those small changes. What else can we do to incorporate more carbohydrates and those higher quality?
At our house, and I don't do it all the time, but every once in a while, we'll have like a pasta, like a fettuccine or something like that, and I'll put peas in it. I don't know if y'all have ever done that or not. And my husband will be like, why is there so many peas in here? But that's a way to, add some things in there. And so everyone, like, you can do the carrot muffins, just adding in different things, like especially like sometimes I will make like a Tex-Mex casserole. So then it's usually you think about just meat and cheese, but I'll put corn or tomato, just adding in those extra things, sneaking them in.
Yeah, just adding some vegetables to the things that you're already making.
Right. And just picking those vegetables that fit that.
My kids love fruit, and I can't keep enough fresh fruit in my house. Like, keeping bananas, apples, grapes, like, they're gone, like, within a day or two, which is a lovely problem to have, but it can be a little expensive, and it can be hard to pack. So we tend to buy, like, canned fruits or the little cups with the individual servings, but making sure you're getting those in fruit juice and not the added sugars and sweeteners, but just in their natural juices. That can be a really good way to send it with them to school or before a practice, or just to have a snack, because my kids are snackers. So having that on hand can be helpful.
One of the things that I've really started doing, and I know we've talked about it in our podcast in the past, and I know Ashley really has talked about it, but adding that no extra salt, or taking the salt out of, if you've got canned vegetables, rinsing them off, or get the no salt added to it. So, because my husband also has had some health issues, and they was like, you need to cut this out. So I've really tried to be more cautious on how much sodium I'm putting in stuff. Because you're talking to the girl that would salt the ketchup for the French fries that already had salt on it. So it's been a very big change, but it is also a good change too. So that's one thing that I have done and incorporated.
Well, and your taste buds will adjust eventually. It just takes a little bit of time. Those are all really great tips. I like all of those tips. You may have heard of diets that focus on reducing or eliminating carbs. Now, we as Extension typically do not promote diets in general, but especially not those that encourage the elimination of important nutrients. But we do encourage the reduction of those refined grains and foods with added sugars. So we really want to focus on those high quality carbs, which are the complex carbs, your whole grains, the ones that are not just the quick energy. We want the gradual energy.
I mean, that's so important. Okay, I can be soapboxy about this, and I have gotten into disagreements with family members over that. Like, if it is a food group that is on your MyPlate, which if you don't know what MyPlate is, it's the new pyramid. So if you're old like me and you remember the food pyramid, it doesn't exist. It's a plate. It's easier, so it's good. But if it is a food group on there, why would we eliminate it? It has a purpose. It does something for our body, and it makes me so terrified for people because they will see results. But what damage are you doing? At what cost are you seeing that result? So, I mean, Ashley just told us this is our main source of energy. And if I cut that out entirely, my body will pull energy from somewhere else. And that means it is not able to do what function it was supposed to do. So just hear us when we say, like, there's healthy ways to do those things and see those changes, but completely eliminating a food group makes me very anxious.
Yes. Well, and it doesn't mean that we're eating only carbs.
Right.
We just talked about how we're looking for about 45% of our calories coming from carbohydrates. So it's not only carbs, and we don't want to have too many, but that balance and moderation is the key here. We're going to move on to protein now, which I think we hear a lot about in social media. Let's get higher protein. And some of us do need to increase our protein intake. Some of us are probably good on protein. So what kind of proteins do we like?
I like eating eggs.
Eggs, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a teen that eats eggs every day, like multiple.
I'll boil them ahead of time and then have some, already peeled and everything in the refrigerator, grab them on the go.
We do a lot of chicken, so a lean protein, but something that I don't eat a lot at home, salmon, fish type things. Now, if we're out, I will buy it on the menu versus a steak or something like, not that there's anything wrong with steak, but I don't cook it at home. So it makes me think like, and sometimes people fix things better when you're out. But so I think that's probably one that I lean to, but most of the time we just have chicken is a favorite at our house.
Yeah, I mean, a variety of proteins. I mean, lots of chicken, shrimp, probably at least once a week. Try to incorporate fish, lots of ground beef as well. And then for me, so just a quick pick me up when I get home from work before I start cooking dinner, because I'm kind of like in my zombie mode at that point. I'll grab a handful of nuts to just kind of give me a little protein boost as I'm going.
We're a chicken household too, but I think that's mainly because I'm a chicken person and I'm the one who does most of the cooking. So we do a lot of chicken and sometimes the ground beef. We have been trying to cut out more of the saturated fat, so we'll try to get the beef that has the least amount of fat in it. But proteins are very important for our body. They've been called the building blocks of life. And did you know that every cell in our body contains protein? It's recommended that we get 10 to 35% of our total calories per day. And we really want to focus more on the sources and look for those lean proteins. Just like with the carbohydrates, we want the high quality sources. And we want to minimize that processed meat. Our processed meat has a lot more sodium. Joni mentioned cutting back on sodium earlier, and we want to cut back on the processed. Protein supports our muscles, tendons, skin, hormones. I tell my preschoolers, like, protein helps build strong muscles. And I think we know that, but do we really think about how it is helping our skin, and our body is producing hormones, and protein is part of that process. We do have animal and plant sources. I'm curious, Tiffany, I know at one time y'all were leaning towards some plant sources of protein rather than having the animal sources. How's that going?
So I'm all for it. My family not so much, but I like all sources, honestly. But we have gotten much more into like mushrooms and things like that we can add into pasta dishes and other things to give more protein in a plant state.
Well, and I think we think a lot about the animal proteins and we forget a little bit about the plant sources, but there are plant sources of protein. And when we eat that protein, it is broken down into amino acids, and they're divided by essential amino acids and non-essential. Essential amino acids must come from food. Our body cannot make them, which means our non-essential, our body can make them, or they can come from food. I'm not going to go too far into that, but I just wanted to give you just a little bit of background knowledge there. So our complete proteins contain all 9 of those essential amino acids. And our complete proteins, we get that from meat, fish, poultry, eggs, dairy, soy. Quinoa is a complete protein. And chia seeds are also a complete protein. And that honestly was news to me whenever I started researching, because that's not something that I typically that pops into my head as being or quinoa specifically as being protein. So I thought that was very interesting. And then our incomplete proteins are missing 1 or more essential amino acids, but they still give us other nutrients. So we want a variety of protein sources, and you don't want to be like, oh, well, that's an incomplete protein, so I don't need that one. You can mix and match them to get your essential amino acids. Most plant-based proteins are incomplete proteins, so beans, nuts, legumes, seeds, grains. But if you were to pair black beans with rice, you've got your complete.
That makes me feel good. So our Plan Eat Move website has a black bean quesadilla. My kid loves them. So I was like, I didn't realize, because I was like, it's protein. I didn't realize it was incomplete, but we always eat rice when we have a Mexican theme. So that makes me feel a little bit better about that I'm feeding him what he needs to eat.
Yes, you're getting all of those essential amino acids. Peanut butter, pair it with whole grain toast. Hummus, any hummus fans?
I like hummus, yeah.
I tried to make it one time.
I forget about it, but when I've had it, I enjoy it.
So hummus, pair it with pita bread. And there you go. So mix and match your proteins. You don't have to just be like, okay, well, I can only eat meat, because we want to vary our sources. All right, let's put it into practice. All right, so what does this look like in real life? How can we apply this information when we are meal planning?
Well, like I was talking about a while ago, I do enjoy eating eggs. And so with that, I can also add like a turkey sausage with them eggs. And then also I could do whole wheat toast as well. So, and we do also, like everybody was talking about a while ago, we do eat whole wheat bread as well. My husband even takes it with him when he's gone out of town for work. He makes sure that he has his whole wheat bread as well.
I've tried to start substituting turkey for ground beef. So when I do buy ground beef, I do get lean. So I've done it in like pastas, things like that. They don't really notice it that much, but that's just kind of something that I've tried to incorporate a little bit more to get more of those leaner proteins.
I think honestly with my family, it's just trying to get a variety of different proteins throughout the week. And when I am planning meals for the week, I do try to look, and if I have only chicken all week long, I try to substitute something out. And I really do try to get like a seafood, a fish once a week, a chicken, and then something else. And then maybe a night that we're not going to use an animal protein. We're going to use a plant protein instead. And just trying to give it variety, one, for us to get different sources, but also just to keep it fun, because I think we get stuck in ruts. We find like 1 or 2 things that work, and we keep doing it over and over until our family goes, I never want to eat that again. And so just trying to keep it mixed up.
Protein is one of the things that we struggle with for our youngest. Trying to find a protein that she will eat and likes has been a little bit of a struggle. I encourage her to put peanut butter on her toast. And then we get some bananas, which I know are not protein, but she likes bananas. So fruit, yay. So we've got bananas, and then she can add a few chocolate chips to that. And she loves her peanut butter toast. And then we also will make overnight oats and use the Greek yogurt. So we've got some extra protein there. And I actually can use the plain peanut butter, and then she loves bananas, so we mix that up with the whole grain oats, and she really likes that. So those are two things that we have really tried, and I try to even encourage her to put peanut butter on her pancake, at least on one of the pancakes. And we've used protein waffles. She doesn't love those as much as she does a regular pancake, but she will eat them. So really ours have to focus on the breakfast area, because she will eat ground beef, but she's not really a big chicken person, and she will not touch fish yet. Maybe we'll get there.
I mean, trail mixes, they're so easy to fix up, and getting them proteins added to, the trail mixes is really good. Plus you can get whole wheat. If you pick a whole wheat bars cereal to add with that, trail mixes are a really good way also to get that.
Yes, anytime you can incorporate protein into your snack, I think that is perfect, because it helps you. It's going to help you feel full, and you're just adding protein throughout the day rather than, like I'm trying to do, is get the protein in my child in the mornings because it's not happening later.
It's funny though, because I was listening to you talking about what she will and won't eat, and I was thinking about my teenager, my oldest teenager, and I make fun of him a little bit because he wants to eat the exact same things every day, but he really is eating a good variety of protein, because he will eat whatever animal protein I make for dinner, but he is every day eating eggs, every day eating whole grain toast with peanut butter on it, and every day eating yogurt, Greek yogurt. All three of those things are probably on his menu every single day. And I'm like, gosh, that's a lot of the same things, but he is getting a good variety of proteins doing that.
Yeah, and that's great. He's also an athlete, so protein, well, actually all the macronutrients are important for our athletes as well. And we have several publications on fueling the body for athletic performance. So if anyone's interested in that, be sure and let us know. So lots of ways to incorporate protein. Let's round it out with our third macronutrient, fats. And fats they have a really bad reputation. There's all kinds of diets out there that are cutting fat completely, and we don't want to have any fat in our diet, and fat is bad. Once again, not all fats are created equal. We typically try to avoid fat because we don't want to gain weight and things such as that. But fats really do play an important part in our body, and our body does need fat. Fats transport fat-soluble vitamins. That's the way that they get into your body. Fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. Fats keep us warm. They protect our organs. They provide energy. Now, are they our main energy source? No, but they do provide energy. They give structure to every cell in our body, and they also are very important for the production of hormones. And then they give flavor to food. And we're all nodding around here like, yeah, they do.
That's what we're here for.
Yes, yes, they do. Now, you will notice that the recommendation for fats is quite a bit smaller. We've got about 20 to 35% of total calories per day and less than 10% from saturated fat. So, not all fats are the same. We do have those unsaturated fats and the saturated fats, and you may have heard those terms before, and we won't spend a ton of time on it, but just know that unsaturated fats, those are typically liquid at room temperature. Plant oils, nuts, and seeds, and avocados have unsaturated fats. Flaxseed, chia seeds, fish products, tuna, salmon, those contain unsaturated fats. Those are going to be your higher quality fats. Those are the ones that we want to focus on. Your saturated fats are typically solid at room temperature, and they're mostly found in animal products. Butter, lard, fatty cuts of meat, those pastries that we love, cheese. Too much saturated fat can lead for a higher risk of heart disease and stroke. So yes, we do want to limit our saturated fats, and we want to make sure that we are using unsaturated fats. So let's think about that. What do you use most in the kitchen as far as unsaturated?
Like olive oil.
I was
with
about to say
every meal.
olive oil.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
use a lot
same.
of olive oil.
Yeah.
Same.
I thought we were all in this room mostly on the same page with we use a lot of olive oil, but there are other plant oils. We've got canola oil, vegetable oil. So there's different oils that you can use for cooking. We know that we want to limit saturated fats and we want to use more of the unsaturated fats. So just like we did with the proteins and the carbohydrates, how are we going to put this into practice? How are we going to incorporate fats into our everyday life?
Well, instead of me using bacon grease to fry my eggs, I'm going to use olive oil or the cooking spray that's like the olive oil in that.
I think I've said before, but we really like avocado. And so that's been something we've started to use more. Like always have used it to make guacamole, which is a big hit in my house. Everyone likes that. No one complains. But also adding it to salads and sandwiches. And my daughter has been mashing it up and making avocado toast. And that's good for her because, again, she's an athlete too. And that gives her a boost. But yeah, between that and the using the olive oil and then vegetable oils and some other things, that's been the biggest thing. And nuts, that's another thing we keep on hand to, a variety of.
Well, and I think a lot that we will see when you're trying to plan this out is that if you are looking for your leaner proteins, such as Amanda mentioned earlier that she goes for fish when she's out, well, you're getting your proteins. You're also getting your unsaturated fat. If you're adding the nuts or the seeds to your salad, you're getting your unsaturated fats. They all really tie together, which is how we're going to finish this episode. Because maybe you don't want to count your macros. You don't want to count the grams and you don't want to do the percentages and things such as that. And I get it. I'm not telling you to count your macros. I'm just telling you to include the macronutrients in your daily meal planning. MyPlate gives us a visual reminder of what a balanced diet looks like. We've got our 5 food groups: fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. MyPlate encourages us to make half of our plate fruits and vegetables, about a fourth of our plate grains, a fourth of our plate protein, and a small amount of dairy as well. Let's put that into practice for our macronutrients. We get carbohydrates from grains, fruits, and vegetables. We get protein from the protein group, dairy, and veggies. And then we get fats from dairy, grains, and protein. So we want to focus on a variety of foods from each food group. So not those same foods over and over and over, but a variety. Foods that are lower in saturated fats, and we can find that by looking at the nutrition label and also knowing that saturated fats are typically solid at room temperature and lower in added sugars. If you are looking for a specific meal plan, we do encourage you to consult a dietitian. If your doctor has given you a recommendation, we are not physicians. We give general information and we want you to stick with what your doctor tells you. We will link all the references in our show notes, and stick with us over the coming weeks for some more topics in nutrition. Thank you for listening. This is Life Simplified.
Thanks for listening to Life Simplified. We are family and consumer sciences agents with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. Contact us at lifesimplifiedpodcast@gmail.com.